Hello and welcome to the Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host, Samit Paul, and with a new campaign upon us, it is time for a season preview. On the agenda for today's episode, season aspirations. I'll be giving my review of the squad and tactics, as well as looking at our new signings and those who've departed. I'll also give my prediction for the new season, and of course, we'll go through all your Twitter comments and questions. First up though, let's get started with thoughts on what we want from this season. Look, so the objective for me is getting back into the Champions League. Maldini said it, Leonardo said it, we're all saying it online. Back-to-back sixth place finishes in the Europa League again this year. We do need to kick on now. We've got the squad, I believe, that can start challenging for the top four realistically. So we've got to get back to the top table of Europe. Title challenge is not realistic or even coming close to Juve. I do believe they're still in a league of their own. And you've obviously got to add the Ronaldo factor there as well. Napoli, potential question mark. I think you're looking at Sarri at Chelsea. He's gone in and replaced Antonio Conte. He's having a slight struggle implementing his ideas and tactics and the style of play that he wants. Who's to say that Ancelotti might not experience a similar thing at Napoli trying to replace Sarri? We all know first-hand experience that Carlo is a fantastic coach. He's a great manager. So he might even go in and make an even more positive impact than Sarri did at Napoli. But for me, I do believe there is a slight question mark over whether or not they can still continue to push Juventus at the top of the table. They have, of course, kept the core together apart from Jorginho, so again, they will be strong. Roma have bought some really exciting players, but the question for me again is, can Eusebio Di Francesco gel all that together and make them a star team immediately? Again, there's a lot of new faces there. They lost Alisson. Can they get it together and really kick on? There's a question mark there for me. Inter, unfortunately, look really strong. I think they've made some very sensible signings. You've obviously got the Spalletti factor as well. He did a great job last season, but you're adding De Vrij, Nangolan, Lautaro Martinez looks like a great player. They have bought really well this summer, I believe, and they look like they're primed to really kick on. And then, of course, there's Lazio. So for me, I believe that Lazio, we've got to start finishing above them. I think they've been weakened this summer. I don't really fancy their signings as such. So if I'm looking at the two teams that we need to pip to the top four, I would probably single out Roma and Lazio for me. I think Juve, Napoli and Inter look very strong, but there is a genuine opportunity there, I think, for the fourth place, and I think we can pip one of them to it. So objective, 100% without a doubt, has to be getting back into the Champions League. And I held a poll, an idea of what you guys believe we can achieve this season. The question was, will Milan get back into the top four? 11% of you said title challenge. I don't know whether that was just wishful thinking, but 11% have said title challenge. 73% said top four, which I completely agree with. And 16% said fifth or below. So again, like I said earlier, it's going to be a failure. Anything fifth or below now is an absolute failure for us. We need to kind of really start to push on and not just continue to trail our rivals in that top four race. We've got the foundation. We've got 12 months of these guys together now after all the movement last summer, which was, to be fair, it was a lot of new faces. There was some settling in time for a couple of players. Now is the time to kick on, for them to develop, for the new signings to come in and do a job. I genuinely think top four is a realistic shout. So let's keep our fingers crossed that happens. On to the review of the squad and tactics. The question is, again, are we now strong enough to compete on various fronts? Last season, I felt we run out of steam. We didn't have the depth to rotate. I think Gattuso relied on several players too much. We saw Kessie run into the ground. We saw a few other players start to kind of wane off at the end of the season. Suso was another one that comes to mind. So I think, you know, we've added a lot of players this summer. We've seen a few go, of course, as well. But if you're looking at Donnarumma and Reina fighting for the goalkeeping position, some of us raised question marks over whether Reina was coming in to replace Donnarumma. Looks like he's going to be a backup and a very good one at that. We've got Strinic and Rodriguez competing at left back and potentially Laxalt if he comes in. All reports suggest that he's going to have his medical tomorrow. So there could be up to three players battling it out on the left flank. You've got Romagnoli, Caldara, Musacchio and Zapata fighting at the centre-back positions. Again, that's a fair amount of depth that we can call upon, whether we're rotating for the Europa League, for the Coppa Italia. I feel like those four can give us a really solid foundation. And then, of course, Calabria, Conti and Abate at right back. Abate, I can see his role diminishing more and more every year. I think his experience and leadership will be a factor. But I'm looking at Calabria to really start the season strong. Conti still out with injury, unfortunately, but hopefully he'll come back as well, fully recovered soon enough. But Calabria can make that position his own to start the season. So a lot of depth there in the back line. And of course, I think we need to pay attention to potentially Simic and Gabbia, whether or not they can make a dent this season. Perhaps Gattuso will give them a run out in the Europa League if we, make it easy work in the group stage, we qualify. Would be nice to see some of the youngsters given a chance. So They're two names to potentially look out for, but we'll see how that develops. Onto the midfield, we've got Bakayoko, Biglia, Montalivo, unfortunately, Kessie, Mauri, Bertolacci in the deeper positions. Again, depending on tactics, which I'll get onto in a minute, you're looking at a lot of depth there. Not particularly great depth. Montalivo, hopefully there's talk that he was going to be axed this summer. Didn't go on the pre-season tour, but he's still around, so I don't know what that means at the moment. But if you're singling out players, I think Bakayoko and Biglia in that deeper lying position can do a great job for us. Kessie, of course, has to kick on now. He showed exactly what he could do last season. He impressed me a lot, but he needs to show that bit of maturity, that bit of development, especially in the attacking third, his decision-making. We need to see a bit more improvement from him. Jose Mauri impressed a lot of us in pre-season, so potentially he might have fought his way into the plans of Gattuso this season. And Bertolacci, I've spoken on him a number of occasions. I do hope we can ship him off before the transfer deadline passes, but it remains to be seen who actually wants him, in all honesty. I think, as I've mentioned before, his game is just outdated, and I think he doesn't really offer much to the team anymore, so we'll have to see how his position develops. In the more attacking roles, you've got Halilovic, Çalhanoğlu, Bonaventura, Suso and Borini, and potentially Castillo if he comes in from Villarreal. Again, a lot of depth there. Potentially not the greatest sort of world-class standout quality that a team that we like Milan need. But again, I'm looking at Çalhanoğlu to kick on. I think he had a great second half of last season. We all saw the confidence come back, the fitness come back. He was assisting, he was scoring goals, he was playing really well. So I expect him to be a more influential figure for us next season. Bonaventura, we know what we get from Jack. He'll obviously chip in with his goals and assists as well, that creativity through the middle. Suso needs to improve on consistency. He has a great start to the season, standout moments where he's very crucial for us, but then in the latter stages of the season he drops off and disappears. Can't afford to see that as he kind of progresses and gets older and reaches his prime. Interesting to see what Halilovic offers. Again, don't really know what he can do. Barcelona showed that faith in him, didn't work out. Now he's got a big opportunity to redeem himself. Let's hope he can grab that with both his hands and really prove to us how good he is. And then Borini potentially moved into a more natural role up front. Don't know. We'll see how that develops. But again, as long as he's not playing out wing in a creative role, which doesn't suit him, which he's not capable of doing, then perhaps we might see a bit more from Borini up front. And again, the question mark over Castillo, I personally, I'm not going to lie, I haven't seen Villarreal a lot. I haven't seen much of him. I've done my research, of course. He does look like he can offer a bit more pace, a bit more directness, a bit more speed on the ball. So he's not really a Suso type player, which many of you said on Twitter as well when I asked for feedback. So thanks for all your comments and insights on him there. But yeah, he might be a very interesting one. He's still only 23, chipped in with a few goals, a few assists last season in La Liga. I don't want to judge him until he's played for us, and then we can take it from there. Hopefully he's not another flop in terms of Ocampos and those guys. He is a player that can actually develop and be a really influential player for us. Gattuso must have seen him, must have liked what he'd seen, so let's fingers crossed that he can make a decent impact. Up front, we've got Higuain and Cutrone now. Bacca's probably going to go as part of the Castillejo deal. We've seen Kalinic leave, we've seen Silva go on loan to Sevilla. Is that enough? I personally don't think so. I think you need 3 strikers to really compete on all fronts. Whether Borini's now going to come in and play up front and whether or not he's actually capable of scoring goals consistently will be up for a debate. But for me, Higuain and Cutrone alone, that is a little bit of a risk. I'd probably want a third. Understand completely the decision from Silva to leave on loan. Can't afford to have another season being third choice. Needs to play games, needs to develop, and hopefully we'll see him come back in the future. But that is a concern for me, that the 2 main options up front, even if we do play a different system where there's 2 men up front, if they're both going to start, then where's the third option off the bench to kind of offer something different? It is a concern for me, but again, we'll see how that pans out. There is, of course, 2 days left in the transfer window as well, so maybe potentially more movement. Talking tactics, there are 2 systems that stand out for me. Whether or not Gattuso continues with the 4-3-3 that he's adopted since he came in, we're talking Donnarumma in goal, Calabria, Caldara, Romagnoli, Rodriguez in the back, give or take a couple of players here or there. Kessie, Biglia, Bonaventura, and then Suso, Higuain, Çalhanoğlu up front. Again, like I said, you can interchange players and bring in others, but the rigid sort of 4-3-3 is there. Or what I would like to see him do and use is a 4-2-3-1. Donnarumma in goal, Calabria, Caldara, Romagnoli, Rodriguez at the back. and then maybe even go with a duel of Bakayoko and Kessie, interchanging with Biglia at times, but Bakayoko and Kessie in that two-man deeper midfield to give the foundation, to break forward as well and interchange and do a double pivot for us. And then Suso, Calhanoglu, Bonaventura as the three supporting, and then Higuain up front with Cutrone as an option off the bench. Whether or not that's something that he'll use, he'll experiment with, we'll have to wait and see. If you've got a variation of that, let us know in the comments. But ultimately, I think it might be one of those two, especially with the kind of players that we've brought in. I think they're fitting those kind of systems. So let's see how that pans out. Onto the new signings. Reina, solid backup option. As I mentioned earlier, whether or not he was supposed to come in as a Donnarumma replacement from the previous management, we don't know, but looks like Donnarumma's staying now, so he's going to have to be pushing him, and that should be good for Donnarumma as well for his development. Caldara is a great signing, one for the present and the future, as Leonardo said. I think he can build a great partnership with Romagnoli moving forward, both at a similar age, 24, 23. They can actually really kick on now and establish themselves for club and country. So I'm really looking forward to that partnership blossoming in this season. Higuain, finally a great striker that can potentially lead us to a consistent source of goals. His track record does not lie. I think it's 146 goals in 251 games since he moved to Italy. So yeah, I think he can finally be that man up front to really bang in the goals for us and be a consistent scorer. The only issue I have is potentially that we rely too heavily on him. I don't really want to see him becoming the new sort of Ibrahimovic where we look for inspiration from him all the time. Others need to take on the responsibility and chip in as well. So let's not just look at Higuain and say, let's go and let's see if he can be the top goal scorer in Serie A this season. I do want 15 to 20 goals from him, of course. That's what he's essentially been brought in for. But Calhanoglu, Bonaventura, Suso, a couple of the other guys, they all need to chip in and improve themselves as well. So let's not all put it all on Higuain to score the goals for us this season. Bakayoko, I think, is a very solid addition. I think he's versatile in midfield. Like I mentioned earlier, he can either play in a more defensive position in front of the back line. He can potentially play on the right of the three as a Kessie alternative. Very strong, very powerful, energetic, technically quite good. I think the slower tempo in Serie A will suit him. I think the sort of frenetic pressing and the tempo in the Premier League probably exposed his flaws a little bit too much, but he should have learned from that experience, come to Italy, can use the experience he gained in Monaco as well. He's a Liga winner. I think it's a really sensible decision. And then, of course, we can make our decision at the end of the season in the summer as to whether or not we're going to exercise that option to buy. So really good addition, I think. Bakayoko, very solid. Strinic, Halilovic, squad depth. I don't think they're going to push on and really stamp their mark on the starting lineup, but always useful, especially Antonelli leaving, Strinic coming in to kind of fill that role. Halilovic, again, maybe he could be the joker in the pack. Maybe he can just come on, change games and have his impact when he's given an opportunity. So decent additions there. Castillejo, again, like I mentioned earlier, I haven't really seen much of him, but from what I have seen of highlights, much more speed and directness on the ball. I think he can play on either wing, looks comfortable on both feet, and hopefully he's just more than a Suso, which is what I initially thought he was. So potentially another great signing. And again, like I said, Leonardo, Maldini and Gattuso are all convinced about him. So that must mean he's got something about him. Let's fingers crossed he can shine at Milan. And then Laxalt is another one that's said to be closing in on a move. Quietly impresses me, I think. I've not seen a great deal of him. I saw bits of him at Genoa, bits of him with Uruguay. Obviously not a marquee addition, and I guess maybe our expectations were raised by Higuain and Caldara coming in, and then the links with Milinkovic-Savic. So maybe it kind of feels like a bit of a disappointment, but still only 25, very versatile, can play left back, left midfield in a more advanced position on the left wing. He will work tirelessly, so I think he suits Gattuso to the ground. But whether or not he can have a really positive impact consistently at the highest level is a question mark. We'll have to wait and see, but that move looks like it's happening, so I can only offer my support to him and hope he does the business. Also held a poll on signings. I asked who your favourite signing of the summer was. Unsurprisingly, 76% of you said Higuain, 19% said Caldara, 2% said Bakayoko, and 3% said other. A couple of the comments on other, at Chapez6, Maldini and Leonardo, which I thought was a fantastic shout. Obviously not signings for the squad, but massive additions to the club, and hopefully, fingers crossed, when the restraints of financial fair play are a little less, then maybe they can really kick on and have a real big influence on buying players and sorting this squad out. At Milanista_JF9, Milinkovic Savic for him. He'll wait till the end of the Mercato, where we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Yes, I think that will probably be the biggest and most popular option if he does arrive, but unfortunately, I don't think I'll be holding my breath on that one. And Alessio Tackle said Reina. Interesting. Everyone's got their opinion. That's fair enough. Probably not my standout signing, but he has his merits, and I think he is a really important addition. So fair play on that one. Another poll I held was to ask you guys, was it a mistake to sell Locatelli? Join Sassuolo with an obligation to buy, so we have really cut ties now. He is going to start his new adventure with Sassuolo. I'm torn on it personally. I think it's disappointing to see him go. A comment from @JohnSis on Twitter, I remember he was saying that we should have maybe sent him out on loan for a year or two with the option to bring him back. His value wouldn't have really dropped. He may have even got, more valuable to us, and he could have proved himself. So it's a bit disappointing that we've just said, look, no, it's not going to work. See you later. But on the other hand, how far has he really come? I think it's more of a sentimental thing that he's one of our own. You want to see him develop and become a star, the homegrown star for Milan. He hasn't really kicked on since he broke through for me. I think we're looking for positives. Well, me personally, I'm always looking for the positives. He's very quick on the ball. He's very quick with his decision making. He pushes the ball forward very quickly. He did improve slightly defensively, but again, there were frailties there. The consistency wasn't there. Gattuso was constantly barking at him in pre-season from the touchline. You could hear him constantly, locker, locker, locker. So it was not, I don't think Gattuso was sold. I don't think he had the faith in him either. So half and half on it, but perhaps, he may make us regret it, but I think the decision's right. I think we do need to move on. And it is disappointing, but that's the way it is. On the poll, really interesting, 50% said yes, we'll regret it. 50% said no, didn't do enough. So everybody's obviously split on that one. I think there was around 200 votes on that one to give you an idea of how many people voted. But yeah, I'm not surprised. That's really close to call. I think it is really difficult to kind of sway to one side. But yeah, disappointing, but wish him well. Hopefully he fulfills his potential. And then another poll. Do you or did you ever believe at any point that Milan would sign Milinkovic Savic? 58% of you said yes, 42% said no. That is kind of surprising. I genuinely felt as though many of you would have just thought it was a pipe dream, never going to happen. But clearly, the reports and everything around it have convinced you that it was possibly on the table. It does kind of sound more realistic that the reports are suggesting that it comes down to formulating an offer that we can offer Lazio and satisfy their demands while also not screwing ourselves with UEFA again. So that kind of makes me believe that yes, there might be talks going on in the background, even though Leonardo has dismissed it every time it's been mentioned. So yeah, potentially some truth in it, but whether or not it's actually going to happen this summer, I don't think it will. Hopefully he doesn't move elsewhere and we can revisit it next year, but we'll have to wait and see. And then finally, guys, predictions. I've gone for top four. Like I said earlier, I don't think we're good enough to challenge for the title. I think we're stronger this season than we were last season. I think Higuain impact with his goals is going to make a massive difference. If you're looking at that additional 10 to 15 goals from him, again, it's a big if because the question mark remains as to whether or not he can do it with these players around him. Made a very good start against Real Madrid, of course, but can he do it with Milan, with these new set of players? We'll have to wait and see. But if you're adding his goals to this team, I think that alone will take us close to the top four. But we're looking at Caldara, we're looking at Castillejo if he makes a really good impact. Lax out, same applies for him. Bakayoko. We have got stronger this summer, I do believe. We've got rid of some surplus to requirement players, if I'm being honest, in likes of Antonelli as well. So I think, I do believe we're a stronger outfit and we can push on and get that top four. On top of that, I would also argue that the fact that the squad that was put together last summer has now had 12 months together, so they should really be improving and building chemistry. They're all settled at San Siro. They know what the expectations are. They know the pressure, the responsibility that comes with playing for Milan now. So I fully expect the likes of Kessie, Calhanoglu, even Romagnoli, if he gets the captain's armband, which is looking likely. I expect all of them to continue to develop and become better players. So again, fingers crossed, combine those two together, and I think we've got a really good thing going at the moment. So let's hope there's improvements this year. Right, guys, so on to another topic which I found absolutely fascinating. Shout out to Moz at Mr. GL on Twitter for him coming up with the idea last week when he asked me why I became or how I became a Milan fan. So for those of you that missed it, It started in the UK in the 90s. Channel 4, one of the terrestrial channels, used to show Serie A on the weekends, Sunday afternoon kickoff mostly. And I remember immediately falling in love with Italian football. First team I remember watching was Milan. The sort of Dutch magic trio, George Weah, around that sort of period. I just remember watching them fully packed San Siro, and I just immediately fell in love with Milan. So that day I followed them from a young age all the way through, even though the TV rights got passed around the UK with Italian football not, obviously not a priority for everyone, given the Premier League sort of growing and becoming more popular. But followed it through, and then of course I've been fortunate enough to work and write about Milan for a good number of years now, so it's been a pleasure. But some of your stories are fantastic. Again, thank you all for putting your stories forwards on Twitter. I really appreciate it, and I genuinely absolutely love reading it. So just a couple here. At Samir72, Pro Evolution Soccer 2008 on PS2 got me into football. My whole family supported Argentina. I wanted to rival them, so started supporting Brazil. In Pro Evolution Soccer 2008, Brazil squad had my favourite player Kaká because of his speed and dribbling. So then a year later I got to know he plays for a club when I was a kid. Never really knew or followed club football, but found out about Milan, and they had Ronaldinho as well, and ever since then it's always been Milan. Sadly never saw Kaká, but playing for Milan in his prime. Samir was a year too late for that, but again, just fascinating to see how all you guys managed to come round and support Milan. It's great to hear. At Precious Mowgli, 24 years ago in secondary school, sports news was read during assembly on Wednesdays or Fridays. After one news session, the presenter said the first person to come to him with the year Milan was founded would have the opportunity to prepare and present the news. The following week, I got home, I leafed through my uncle's old football magazines and discovered the Milan badge. I told the presenter the year and was given the opportunity to present the news the following week. This was 1994 and it was my first year in secondary school. The rest is history, been a Milan fan ever since. Forza Milan. Again, absolutely amazing, just the way that it all comes about. Really, really interesting to hear. At the Milanisti 11, been a Milan fan since I was 7 years old. My family was on holiday in Milan and we went to a restaurant. The owner was a die-hard Milanista, and the decor was covered in signed team photos and shirts. In a friendly gesture, he gave me his own AC Milan banner as we were leaving. The next day, we visited San Siro, and I was so inspired by the museum and hearing of all the great players who played for AC Milan. Ever since then, I started following the team results. Properly started watching the games when I was 12, when Milan beat Arsenal 4-0 in the UCL. At Borry Keynes, became a Milan fan in the unfortunate Champions League final in Istanbul. I was happy to see Milan win, then the second half came and you know what happened. Seeing the players cry made me want to support them even more, so I started supporting them from then on. It's weird, that is, because I've also got that kind of similar story to why I've got a soft spot for the Italy national team. I do remember the Euro 2000 final where they lost to France on the golden goal, I think it was. For some strange reason, that was the reason why I felt like I wanted to support them even more. It's just strange how that one works. But yeah, thanks for that one, Borikens. At Pacheres_ACM, when I was 11, I used to be left alone at my grandma's home where the only thing I liked to do was watch TV. I started watching football and loved the World Cup from 2010. After that, I followed La Liga and Serie A. I liked Real Madrid for all the stars they had, was close to consider myself a Madrid fan until I watched the Milan game. Got impressed by the grinta and passion I saw in players like Gattuso, Nesta, Inzaghi, Boateng and Seedorf, and the atmosphere at San Siro. I realised football was more than luxuries, passion was the key. We won the Scudetto and then the Super Cup of that season. I remember it very well. And never changed my team after that and will never do it. Again, unbelievable stories. I know we've all started at a different time period, but it's just amazing to see which players and what situations and scenarios and events made us all become Milan fans. So that's great to hear as well. At JGallo218, Destiny. First game I ever watched was Milan versus Liverpool Champions League final, and I had to root for the Italian team because I'm Italian. Then they won and I started watching them. A few years later, found out the day I was born, AC Milan beat Barcelona 4-0 in the Champions League final. I think that really is destiny. That's got to be some sort of fate there, absolutely. And then finally, the man himself, the man that came up with the idea, at Mr. GL Moz. Weird story, got into football because of FIFA 1996. Bierhoff was at his peak. I followed him to Milan a few years later and never looked back. Again, guys, absolutely fascinating to hear how you all became Milan fans. Appreciate you all taking the time to tweet me your stories. If you didn't get a chance this time, leave comments below and let me know your story. But yeah, fascinating, unbelievable how we've all come together to support this great football team, and long may it all continue, guys. Hopefully better times ahead. Right, onto your Twitter comments and questions. At the Milanisti 11, I think this season's objective has to be getting back into the Champions League, and honestly, I've not been this optimistic for Milan in a while. We have a stable yet ambitious ownership, and we finally have a squad that I genuinely think can compete for a top 4 finish. That said, it won't be easy. Every year people say this is the year Lazio, Roma drop off, and they always come out very strong. Juve are on another planet at the moment, and Inter and Napoli are ahead of us, but can certainly compete with Lazio and Roma. I also think it's worth noting that every player seems to trust Gattuso. There's belief amongst the squad and every player in it wants to be here. We've also addressed all our weaknesses. My question is, how far do you think we'll go in the Europa League this season? Firstly, I can't disagree with anything you've said there. I think this is the first time I've been genuinely optimistic about a top 4. Like you said, I think we can pick holes in our squad in previous years, whereas I think we look generally more stronger this season. Again, yeah, like you said, we can all say that Lazio and Roma have gone to drop off. I just said it in the earlier bit of this pod. Hopefully, fingers crossed that the two of them do experience a drop off. We can't, clearly from the last few years, we can't trust Napoli, Roma, and Lazio to really compete and push Juve till the very end. So I think it needs us and unfortunately Inter to really kick on and make it a proper title race. So fingers crossed that happens in the coming years. And then as far as your question, how far do you think we'll go in the Europa League? I honestly believe that we can really aspire towards the last 4. Like I said, again, we weren't ready last year against Arsenal, particularly in the first leg. I think we got stage fright. We looked a shell of the team that we were showing in the build-up to that first leg. Gattuso had started to really make his impact and his influence was growing. But we just didn't show up in that first game. It was our first real big European game, even though it was the Europa League. It was the first real big game that we had in Europe for a long time, and I think we just bottled it. We improved in the second leg. I went there, I was at the Emirates, got the away goal, and then they got that stupid, ridiculous penalty decision just before half-time. So who knows, could have been completely different if that hadn't have been given. But this season, again, like we've both mentioned, I think we're better equipped. We've got more depth. We could compete on various fronts. So I'd fully expect us to really grow and improve and use the experience of last season to our advantage and really push on. So semi-finals, I hope, and then of course the dream, it has to be, is going all the way and winning it. It's the Europa League. Yes, naysayers will say it's not what we want the Champions League, but we're on our way back. We're trying to build. This experience will only better the players, so let's just hope that we can go all the way, win it, and get back in the Champions League if we don't get top 4 as well, of course. At Samir Mohammed 72, we must get back into the Champions League. And try to win trophies like the Coppa Italia and Europa League because it will keep the squad motivated. Completely agree, Samir. Like I mentioned, it's all about, if you're in these competitions, you've got to go out and win them. It's not a case of sulking that you're not in the Champions League. You've just got to go for it and try and do your best and win it. Happy with the current squad. Tactics-wise, we should try a 4-2-3-1. I don't know if your personnel disagrees with what I put forward earlier, but again, I agree with you. 4-2-3-1 definitely looks like a shout. Offers a good balance of defensive stability with Bakayoko, Biglia or Kessie in the 2. And then you've got the creativity just to go all around Higuain to feed him with the chances to score goals. I think that is a really, really strong shout. Really impressed with how Leonardo offloaded so many players that we don't need. Locatelli left on his own, not our management's fault. New signings are good for squad depth, except Higuain, of course, who's going to be much more than squad depth. Again, completely agree. I'm still a little bit nervous that we may have left it a little bit late to make these changes, in terms of chemistry, these players settling in. Have we done enough to replace those that have left? I think we have. I think we've upgraded on the players that have gone with the players we've brought in. So let's just hope that we've done enough and we've given them enough time to make a good start, because I think we desperately need a positive start this season. So yeah, definitely agree with you there. Reaching top 4 on the last day of Serie A, winning Europa League and going to semis in the Coppa Italia was Samir's predictions. Great shout. I think hopefully we don't leave it on the last day. That would be quite dramatic, but if it goes that way, it makes it even sweeter. Winning the Europa League, hopefully, fingers crossed, and semis the Coppa Italia. Coppa Italia can go either way, can't it? I think we had the Lazio penalty shootout last season. The competition gets fierce at the end, doesn't it? All the big teams take it seriously, so it could go either way, but I think we should at least make the last 4 in that as well. And then Samir's question, thoughts on Barini being our third striker? He's finally going to play in his actual position. Yeah, I kind of see your point. I don't think there's any benefit at all playing Barini in a creative role on the wing or supporting striker. He just doesn't have that in his locker. We've seen it time and time again. Yes, he can run hard, he can work hard for the team, he's brilliant at doing that. But no, he can't be a creative player on the wing for us, because I don't know if he even provided a single assist last season. Maybe he did, but yeah, as a third striker, I mean, you know, he can put himself about. He's got the energy to put pressure on the opponent's defence. The question is, can he score goals? You know, we've seen him in spells with Roma and Sunderland where he scored some fantastic goals, but is he the player with the kind of natural instinct to score regularly? As a third striker, you know, maybe we don't need that. We just need him to come on, make an impact, and be that third option. Higuain and Cutrone take up the bulk of the goal-scoring duties, but it'd be nice if Barini kicked on and actually had some sort of positive impact aside from working hard. So yeah, let's see how he does. A few other questions from Samir. Pepita's amount of goals. I'm going to go for around the 15 to 20 mark. I think 20 is possible, I think, because he's obviously going to be the main man. He's going to have the chances to put away. So yeah, 20 is an achievable target. But again, like I mentioned earlier, I am looking for others to step up and not just say, look, give the ball to Higuain and he'll score. Fantastic if he does. But, you know, we're looking at that season with Napoli where he scored, 38 goals, I believe it was. They came second. They needed more from other players as well. So I think 100%, I think 20 is probably the benchmark for Higuain. I'd like to see him do that. But yeah, even more would be fantastic, of course. So let's see how that goes. Third question, Musacchio or Caldara? I'm going to go with Caldara as being the first option next to Romagnoli, but it looks from some accounts that Musacchio is going to get the nod against Genoa. I kind of see the argument for him. He's obviously a bit more experienced. Caldara is coming into a new team. He needs to settle as well. So maybe he will become the new sort of starter in time with Romagnoli. But I've not got a problem with Musacchio starting for now. I think he's a top defender. He's very solid. Obviously, everything changed after Bonucci came in. I think if he hadn't arrived, then we probably would have seen this Romagnoli-Musacchio partnership flourish last season. But yeah, either or, I think they're both solid. But of course, given his age, given the partnership with Romagnoli that could develop, I think I'd like to see Caldara take that starting spot. And then the fourth question was thoughts on getting Milinkovic-Savic for 120 million euros. Is he a one-season wonder? Yeah, I think we've had this discussion on Twitter, but I mean, I agree with your point that you made. You know, it's still a gamble for me because I don't think he's proven consistently over long enough that he is an elite player yet. He's still only 23, so I think you probably got to give him one more year to look at him and think, yeah, he is the real deal. He's going to kick on and improve and develop in the coming years, and he's going to be a world-class, like kind of one of the top midfielders in Europe kind of player. But if the opportunity is there, I think you've got to kind of say, look, let's take the gamble because you've seen what he's capable of. He knows Serie A. Leonardo is obviously convinced by him because he can't stop raving about him. So yeah, I think all the positive factors are there to kind of say yes, we should probably go for it. But yeah, I'm not 100% convinced to say that he's going to be the absolute star and MVP of this team moving forward. So let's see how it develops. Hopefully he does arrive. I mean, like I said, if the opportunity is there, I would jump on it. But there are still question marks, so I do agree with you on that one. At Barry Keynes, do you think Castillejo was the right decision as opposed to a more established left winger like Martial? Was he worth sending back off and now we're left with just Higuain Cutrone at centre forward? I personally think Castillejo will end up like Sosa or Ocampos, hoping I'm wrong. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think there is still an element of doubt as to whether or not he's going to be an absolute star for us, or is he just going to be someone that makes up the numbers and doesn't really kind of find his full potential with us. I hope, as you said, that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to what was a realistic option as well. Was Martial realistic? Was Depay a realistic option? Quincy Promes was another name linked. Was that really worth the money that we were linked with? You know, there are other aspects to take into consideration, but if this was the best option, then again, I'm relying on Gattuso and Maldini and Leonardo on this one. It seems quite random, so you kind of have to believe that there's method in the madness, if you like, that they know and believe that he can be something for us. So I'm willing to give him a shot, and then we'll just make our judgment after we've given him a good few weeks to kind of settle in and prove himself. And then, yeah, I agree with you on your point on Bacca going the other way. Not necessarily keeping Bacca. I mean, everyone knows that I've got my issues with him, especially the way he sulked the season before last. But leaving ourselves with just two strikers, I think, is a risk. Whether or not he was happy with being third choice again is another debate. But I think we probably could do with a third striker if we can get one in. But yeah, that is a concern for me moving forward. At @A_Ciala, to get to Champions League, we need to finish before 2 teams in the top 6. I think we can surpass Roma and Lazio, maybe Napoli if we are consistent. My doubts are Gattuso, midfield and centre-back next to Alessio. We might end up in 5th or 6th again, but there is a project and things can improve gradually. Excellent points. I think, again, I agree with you. Roma or Lazio are the obvious choices to get back into the top 4. Napoli, like I mentioned, I do raise a question mark with Ancelotti just coming in, whether or not it is a good match between the two and he can be successful there. But yeah, I think we can definitely surpass Roma and Lazio. Doubts over Gattuso, I don't share those. I do think he's the right man for the job and he really has got us playing with a sense of identity, with direction. The players know their roles. They all seem committed to him. I think he is solid in his position. Midfield is still a concern to a degree, yes. And again, I'm not really agreeing with the centre-back next to Alessio. I think Caldara and Musacchio, 2 very good options, so I think we'll be fine there. But, we'll have to wait and see. You may well be right and I'm wrong. So, at Say Pops, did our pre-season performance show any unique pattern of play? Unfortunately, I'm going to have to admit that I didn't really see much of the International Champions Cup stuff. I did see highlights, but given the time that the kickoffs were on for the UK, it was very difficult to kind of factor that in with work. So I only saw highlights, so I can't really comment too much on that. What I can comment on is the Real Madrid friendly from Saturday. I do feel as though it was probably much more impressive than last season, funnily enough. I wasn't expecting us to even be able to compete with them. We did. But also, yeah, the speed, the kind of passing game that we were playing, it was very different to last season. It wasn't slow, it wasn't pedestrian. We were very direct, I felt. So maybe that's a real change that we're going to see this season. But yeah, I think that's something to look out for. At Rishab Dabari, we have done some really smart business in the window till now, and with a few days to go, I'm confident that we can get into the top 4 with this squad. Our squad is almost complete. Castillejo isn't the fastest winger, but he's a lot quicker than what we have in our roster. Completely agree with you there. I think we line up in a 4-2-3-1 this year with Castillejo out wide on the left and Hakan through the middle. And if Milinkovic-Savic comes in, he replaces Biglia in the starting lineup alongside Kessie. I also hope we keep faith in Rodriguez. We don't play Calabria out of position on the left. Again, I completely agree with everything you're saying, Rishab. I think this all makes sense to me. Whether or not it happens and Gattuso is listening, that is another question. But ultimately, yeah, I think that's going to be definitely the way forward for us. Hopefully, it will lead to better results. We'll have to wait and see whether or not that is the case. Rishab also asked, Locatelli's exit hurts a bit, especially seeing as how Cristante has become a very good midfielder after he left us. Fear the same will happen here. All the other deals make perfect sense to me. If we get Milinkovic-Savic through the door, I really believe we can finish ahead of Napoli and Roma. Bold predictions, we finish 2nd behind Juve if we get Milinkovic-Savic, 4th without, so not so bold. Higuain finishes Capocannonieri ahead of Ronaldo with 25 goals in the league. Agreed on Locatelli, excellent point. Cristante, that does feel like deja vu, but again, they didn't prove it with us, so there's almost an element of just saying, look, it didn't work out for us. It's fresh environment, fresh teammates. It can work wonders for some players, so wish him luck and just let's see how he develops. And yeah, with Milinkovic-Savic, I definitely believe we can finish in the top 4. 2nd for me is pushing it. I don't think we're going to be able to go that far ahead, but I like your optimism. And Higuain, 25 goals, I believe that is realistic. I think it is possible for him, but again, much will depend on whether or not we completely rely on him or if others kind of take up that responsibility as well. At Mr. GL, what are the expectations this year for Conte, Hakan, Kessie, Rodriguez and Cutrone? I think all of them have got to improve. Conte, I just hope comes back a better player, fully fit, can pick up from where he left off and develop. I hope, these are 2 very serious injuries he's suffered, so whether or not he's going to struggle to kind of find his top form after that remains to be seen, but fingers crossed he's going to be okay. Çalhanoğlu, I'm really looking forward to seeing. I'm really hoping that he kicks on in a big way. I think he can. Showed us a glimpse of what he could do. And especially if he plays in a more central role, I think we're looking at something special there. So let's see what he can do. Kessie, as I mentioned, excellent defensively, energy, combative in midfield, but we need to see more from him in the attacking phase, but better decision making and just generally a more attacking threat. So let's see that he can do it. Rodriguez, build some confidence, play with more sort of passion and kind of assertiveness in his game. I think he kind of looked a bit lacking of confidence and a bit frail. I think he needs to do more. Cutrone, great season, first full season, 15 goals, I believe, in all competitions. Hopefully he can just replicate that. I mean, let's not put too much pressure on him. It's going to be more difficult now that the defenders know what to expect from him. So let's hope he can just kind of replicate and build on what he did last year. And also, how do you see this starting the first 5 games? as far as wins and losses. Yeah, so I mean, look, we've got a tough first 5 games. Genoa at home, I expect us to win that. Perfect opportunity to really make a statement and kind of make a positive start, so I expect to win. Napoli away is going to be very difficult, as it always is. Probably looking at a draw. You know, I'm not going to... It's difficult to say because I don't really want to say, yeah, we're going to lose. But draw a Napoli away, I think that would be considered a good result for me. Roma at home, again, it's going to be very difficult. I'd probably say a draw again, but at home, with their sort of new nucleus of players, will they take time to settle and prove themselves? Maybe we can take advantage of that, and it's a good thing that we're playing them so early. So maybe a win I'm leaning towards, but I'd say a draw. And then Cagliari away and Atalanta at home, I reckon we can aspire to wins in both of those. There's no reason not to. Again, that's not to say that it's going to be a walk down easy street with both, but I think we can definitely aim towards a win in both of those. So yeah, I'm optimistic that we're going to make a decent start to the season, but whether or not that happens, let's find out on the pitch. And then finally, at Borry Keynes, I think a few of us are confused as to what role Laxalt will play in Milan. I think he's capable of playing left wing. Some are saying left back and some are saying left midfield. What do you think will be the suited role for him given our current situation? I think he's capable of all 3 of these roles. Yeah, agreed. He can play all 3. I think he predominantly played on the left of midfield for Genoa last season, but as we've seen, he can play left back in a more defensive position. And for Uruguay, I saw him in the World Cup as well. I think he can play in a more advanced attacking position. Great to have the options, great versatility. I presume we're probably looking at a direct sort of competition for Rodriguez at left back because he doesn't really fit. If we're going to play a 4-3-3, then maybe he will play on the left. But then where does Castillejo, Sousa and Çalhanoğlu fit in? Maybe Çalhanoğlu is going to play in a more central role, and that's why we've brought Laxalt in. But for me, I think if we're going to go 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, whatever it may be, I think we're going to see more of Laxalt at left back and potentially used now and again as a left winger. So yeah, decent defensively, decent offensively. 5'10", surprisingly. I didn't realise he was so tall, so he can do a job defensively as well. He won't get caught out in that way. But yeah, good signing. Let's see what he can do. Right, guys, thanks for tuning in. As always, really do appreciate it. Leave all your comments below. Subscribe. Tell everyone about the Milan Talk podcast. Lots more content to come this season. Previews, game reviews and ratings. Weekly podcasts with all the talking points. Loads more to come. So follow me on Twitter and Facebook at MilanTalk1. Like I said, comment below. Let me know your tactic thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on the season and predictions. Let me know what you want to hear on the podcast moving forwards. Anything and everything. Keep the comments coming in and the engagement. Really appreciate it. Keeps the channel going. So yeah, all good. Game preview coming up before the Genoa game this weekend, so look out for that. And then of course I'll be back on Sunday night with the player ratings and match thoughts. So until then, thanks for tuning in and Forza Milan.